So you want to watch The Devil all the time, or you just saw it? Is this movie any good? Let's take a look at it and analyze it a bit, coming up next. The Devil All the Time is a September 2020 release on Netflix, written and directed by Antonio Campos, also co-written by Paula Campos. And I had not heard of him before. However, I have some good things to say about him. His compositions in this movie are quite good. One reason I watch this movie is because of the cast list. A very impressive looking cast. It's also set in an area I really like, the Midwest, or really it's actually West Virginia, Southern Ohio, and it's set between World War II and Vietnam. It's a period piece, and it promises to say something about American culture or Midwest or Appalachian culture in general. So those are the main reasons why I watched the movie. Now, this is a sprawling movie. It's based on a novel, and this movie actually feels like a novel. It's going to jump time periods sometimes very quickly between the late 1940s and 1965. It also introduces a new character, a new major character about every 5-10 minutes, at least for a while, up to about 90 minutes into the movie. You get about 10 to 12 characters who get major scenes. So the movie is going to feel jarring as it shifts focus from one character to the next, and you're not quite sure at certain points where it's going or how things connect together. I'm not sure the movie ever solved those problems very well either. And the mood of the movie is very dark and bleak, as some people have called it. It's a Southern Gothic movie with sort of surprise, grisly scenes in it. Very bleak tones overall. Now, the plot of this movie, it's kind of hard to summarize, and I'd end up spoiling too much if I said too much. It begins in 1948 with a man who's returned from World War II and seen something horrific in World War II. It's affected him tremendously. He goes back to Appalachia, which of course is part of the Bible Belt in the United States, and there's a heavy Christian evangelical culture, maybe Baptist, maybe some kind of evangelical setting where people go to church and they pray and they have crosses. And so this man is deeply affected by the war. He's deeply affected by this region's Christianity. And that blend really doesn't work very well. He's an ardent prayer. He gets a wife. They have a child, but eventually, I think PTSD or trauma takes over. And so the movie shifts from the father, this ex-soldier from World War II, later in the movie, about 60 minutes in, to the son and his era when he's growing up in the 60s. Now, I can't say much more than that for those who haven't seen the movie, but this movie involves people who are mostly pretty nasty. You've got crazy, over-sexualized preachers who are more or less hunting women, and you've seen this kind of character before. It even feels like, and I think it alludes very briefly, especially in the musical choices, to the classic 1955 Gothic movie, The Night of the Hunter, also set in Ohio and about a serial-killing preacher. Now, the preachers in this movie aren't serial killers, but you do have a pair of serial killers in this movie as well, and you have a corrupt sheriff, and you have the PTSD soldiers, so most of the characters in this are pretty despicable, and I think the movie is about how a boy or a man deals with that fact in the world. In fact, there's a scene in the movie between the father and the son, the ex-soldier and his young son, where the father gets revenge, and he tells his son, there's just a lot of nasty sons of bitches in the world, we've got to take care of them. And you see a scene of terrible violence, and I think the boy who grows up to be the man who, you see throughout the movie and is a focus later in the movie, he's deeply affected by that, and that becomes part of his character. And this idea that there are nasty sons of bitches in the world, whether they're corrupt and fake preachers or whether they're corrupt cops, something like that, you see this throughout this movie. The movie is, I think, more engaging in the first half, the first 75 minutes, the last hour or so. A bit overly long. It takes a long time, long scenes to sort of resolve everything that's going on, and you're going to have to keep track of the plots, the subplots, and the characters. This is not a movie to watch casually on the weekend, nor if you're a queasy person or if your date is queasy. It's not a good date movie at all. This requires your heavy concentration. I would say it's in the realm. It's got a little bit of Coen Brothers in it, slight little bit of Coen Brothers, Night of the Hunter, as I said. Maybe even a tiny bit, at least in the grisly scenes, of the horror movie director Ari Aster. But overall, this movie is not going to please you. You're not going to enjoy it. It's going to have some scenes of strong disgust. And I think maybe those queasy scenes are overdone at times. Maybe they're helpful in the mode of, say, the Southern Gothic writers like Flannery O'Connor. I don't know. Overall, this movie is maybe a little too grotesque at times. It shows a little bit too much blood or screwdrivers going into necks and that sort of thing. And then it overdoes certain scenes at the end. I thought this movie could be at least 20 minutes shorter. But this is also trying to be a novelistic movie. You've got a heavy dose of voiceover narrator, some of which is maybe not necessary. You've got shifts in time, as I said, and different focuses on main characters. Now, what's this movie about? At least at the beginning, in the first half, certainly it's about whether these people are genuine believers or not, and whether prayer itself works. There's a faith healer at one point who tries to make something crazy happen. He's the guy who drops spiders on his face. A little bit of a spoiler alert there, but not really. And so you get these scenes of people trying to pray and prayer not working, and then the son, who becomes the main character played by Tom Holland, is going to deal with the question of whether prayer works at all. And I suppose in the background, it's not really ever said in the movie, but whether God exists, the Christian God exists. As well, another idea here is the sins of the father or the mother being passed on to the son or the daughter. You've got at least two sets of these. As I said, the ex-soldier who says everybody's a nasty son of a bitch. His son, picks up on that and becomes violent himself and trying to get revenge or trying to actually protect people in his life. You also get this character, Lenora, whose mother died in a horrible way. That's not much of a spoiler. And then she deals with that fact. And is she going to repeat the sins of her mother? And the answer is, yeah, maybe sort of. She'll at least be tempted by that. So do sons and daughters do the same things as their fathers and mothers? And then this movie has, I think, very obviously, the generational shift between right after World War II and then Vietnam. I think this movie confirms one of my suspicions, which I've never really researched, but I think it's there, that after World War II, there's a lot of trauma, a lot of devastation, psychologically, personally, spiritually, and all the people, at least in the United States, trying to recover from the war but never doing so. And this movie says they never did recover. And then you have 20 years later the shift to Vietnam. So the father coming home from World War II, will his son go to Vietnam? Does war affect us in terrible ways? This movie definitely answers yes. There's long-term effects of terrible, devastating wars, whether they're right or wrong. And in this case, it's talking about World War II and its aftermath. I think the entire movie is actually a plot that derives from the aftermath of World War II, and it does not have good things to say about that and its aftermath. So I think this movie overall, some of you, I can't tell you who you're going to be, but some of you are going to like it, and some of you are not going to like it at all. You're going to focus on either the terrible flaws in this movie, it's too slow, too many characters, don't know where it's going. I think a lot of people are going to turn this movie off about 70 minutes in, maybe even earlier, because they're going to lose track of things, and they're not going to care as much, and they're watching on Friday or Saturday night, and it's not going to be as entertaining as they thought it would be. However, the compositions are very good. The sound design is quite good. The cinematography is excellent. If I were a director, I would hire the crew who worked on this movie to do my own movie if I wanted sort of the moods and tones going on here. So there's a lot to praise and a lot to appreciate in this movie. It has some great aspects, some very not so great aspects. For that reason, I'm going to give it a 2.5 out of 5. That may sound bad, but that's average. And I think that means also that some of you are going to like it, as I said, some of you aren't. And I think if you do, as I do, like the plot, premise, like the historical period, and like the actors, you're going to be at least okay watching this movie. But if you don't like grisly, bleak movies, this is not for you. What did you think of The Devil All the Time? What did you think of it? What did you think of The Devil All the Time? I'm really curious to hear from you. Please leave us a comment in the comment section. Oh, and subscribe to the channel for more great reviews, movie commentary, and content. Thank you very much. Have a great day.